does God really speak? Does God still speak? We're going to talk about that today. And I'm also going to be sharing something personal. So stay tuned for more. Meet us at the intersection of outdoor home and faith. We are your hosts, Nathanael and Leesa Boone. Our sights are set on being a beacon of light through adventure inside and outside the home. Join us on this journey as we sow spiritual truth for sure footing through the thrill of the hunt and the joy of transforming the ordinary into extraordinary. Visit our links at boonepodcast.com for more ways that we can serve your home and property. Let's explore and grow together. Welcome to Boone in the Woods and in the Home.
So we've had some horrific events over the last couple of days with
the
weather that we've had, the tornado that come through, lots of people displaced.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just hope that everybody is on the right track to getting back in order and getting things back kind of, I'm not going to say normal, but halfway normal, but
Ironed out,
yeah. So
right.
Been praying for the community, and we'll continue to pray for the community.
That's right. So, does God speak today?
I think the Lord speaks to us in all different ways matters.
Right. So, I've been thinking about this, how does God speak? He speaks through nature. He speaks through people. He speaks through his word. And he speaks through visions and dreams. Anything else you can think about?
Well, the visions and dreams, that'd be kind of through our spirit, spiritual eyes. So I was going to say something about our spiritual eyes. That pretty well cover it, which we cover the nature part all the time.
Right. I mean, you can look at nature and you can see his presence, right? But so in Luke 19, verse 40, it says, "But he answered and said to them, I tell you, if these should keep silent, the stones would immediately cry out." So if you don't praise him, the stones, the rocks are going to cry out and praise him. That's what he's saying. So the nature has the ability to cry out. And there's different things that, like the sunflower, we've talked about how it positions itself and postures itself to look at the sun, and keep his gaze on the sun, similar to what our posture should be. So we can see his presence in everything.
I think he speaks just like being in the hunting stand of him and watching the earth wake up. I think that's a way that he speaks to people. Listen to the birds, sing their song.
Right.
Watching the animals, come out, and I just think that that's one way that he can speak to us.
Right. And in the Bible, there's so many examples of how he gave visions and dreams. Joseph, Jacob's son, he was the 11th son out of 12, and he had the gift for visions and dreams, and they were prophetic, and he could, he spoke them a little bit too soon, and his brothers got jealous. He spoke to Samuel. He spoke to a lot of different people and gave them visions and dreams.
He spoke to Jonah.
Yes, he spoke to Jonah. And it is always direction. It's always a guiding. It's always will you obey? But people today, they don't think that he still speaks. They don't see him speaking, or they don't think that he can speak today. And so that's what we kind of wanted to talk about. And in 2018, I had a series of dreams that he was downloading into me, giving me. And at the time, I had no idea. But what I know now is it was preparing me for 2020 and beyond. And once 2020 hit, then it started making sense. And I went back to everything I wrote down and everything that I remembered, because there were some that I had so many, some of them I didn't write down. And I was like, okay. And you can tell there's a difference between I ate pizza and got sick and had a weird dream to, oh no, that was a prophetic dream. That was a dream and a vision that he has given me. And then some people have visions like they could be awake and they could see something.
I think it was during that point in time that I actually had a couple of dreams that we wrote down.
Right. Ariana had dreams around that time period as well, some of our friends, and we were all comparing. And even now, I've heard other people say, well, in 2018, I was having these weird dreams, or I was having, prophetic dreams, and I didn't understand what they meant. And so I know he was preparing a lot of people to stand strong, to stand firm, and to not bow down to Satan. And so it's amazing how he does that, because you think you're the only one. And then all of a sudden, all these people start testifying. And that's another way that he speaks, is through testimony, right? Like
From other people.
your life speaks of his goodness and his faithfulness. And, if he does it for you, he can do it for someone else. If he did it for you before, he can do it again. And so your life is a testimony, and that does speak. And so in Acts 2, before we get ahead of ourselves, Acts 2, verse 17, it says, "And in the last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams." So it's not in the days of old. It's not just for Joseph. It's not just for all of the minor prophets. It's for today.
It's for those that are
and the
seeking after
future.
Christ.
Yes. And so it's an ongoing thing. And then in Job 33, just to throw some Old Testament in there, Job 33 verses 14 through 18.
It says, "Indeed, God speaks once or twice, yet no one notices. In a dream, a vision of the night, when sound sleep falls on men, while they slumber in their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction, that he may turn man aside from his conduct and keep man from pride. He keeps back his soul from the pit and his life from passing over into Sheol."
This Job reminds me of the dreams that I was having in 2018. And I feel like maybe if I didn't have those dreams, I would have been led astray. And he was trying to keep me in the cleft of his rock, under the shadow of his wings, under his mighty protection, so that I wouldn't bow down to Satan, so that I wouldn't fall prey to the lies. And so he was keeping me in line, and he was showing me corruption. He was showing me what was coming. And so Job is saying, in a dream, a vision of the night, when men are sound asleep, he gives them instruction. And that's what sometimes he'll do, because maybe in the daytime we're so distracted.
That's what I was just thinking. Maybe we're too busy during the day working, thinking about whatever's going on in our lives, whether it's personal, business, whatever. And maybe that time when we are knocked out, and maybe that's just the time that he needs to imprint.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for looking back and remembering those dreams that he gave me. When I was younger, I used to have lots and lots of dreams, and it's important to write them down. I wish I would have written them down and been able to go through them. So now I know when I get them, I write them down, because sometimes you don't remember, but usually when it is a God dream, like it is so real and so alive, and it's so distinctive from every other noise and every other thing, that it stays with you. But sometimes you do need to remind yourself of what it was, so that you could keep that going, stirring yourself up in the way that you should go. And then he speaks through people, and that's like me and you, correcting someone, giving someone a word of encouragement, equipping people. There's all kinds of times where he will do that. And 1 Corinthians 14:31.
"For you can all prophesy one by one, that all may learn and all may be encouraged."
And here he's talking about how people should gather together. And when it says, this is titled Order in Church Meetings, but it's really when people gather together, because it wasn't that official. It wasn't that political, it wasn't a meeting. They were gathering together. They were prophesying to one another. They were singing in hymns to one another. They were, speaking in tongues and in revelation and interpretation and edifying and building one another up. And so anyone can have a prophetic word for somebody. You don't have to have the gift of prophecy. It's saying here that everyone should be able to prophesy to one another. And that's how he uses us. We're a mouthpiece that he can flow through if we allow him, and we can prophesy to one another.
We don't always know what our words are going to have as far as when it comes to impacting someone else. And, we may not know
Right.
that what we're saying that God may be using
Confirming
or
to some.
confirming something in their life, or they're just getting.
Or sometimes we know, like, listen, I got to tell you something. I feel this unction and this thing. I've got to tell you something that God wants you to
just
know.
getting a word of encouragement that they needed.
Right. To egg them on their life. And that's important. So when you feel that, when you feel like just this overwhelming sensation to say something to somebody, do it, because you don't know the impact.
So whenever we feel that tug within us, and sometimes we sit there and argue back and forth, was that God or is that God? You know what? 9 times out of 10, if it's positive, then it's God.
Right. Well,
most of the time, I'm saying 90% of the time.
And I will say that a lot of times he will say that God only prophesies good. But actually, if you read the Old Testament, he was prophesying things that were going to happen if they didn't come correct. And so, the thing is, we have to be sure to be used at all times and to build people up and ask him every day, who do you want me to speak to? Who do you want me to encourage? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to bless someone? And allow him to flow through you. It's so important.
What did he send Noah to do? Or not Noah, but he's Jonah. He sent Jonah with a word
to go to Tarshish. Yeah.
Not encouragement. It wasn't encouragement, but it was
if they don't come correct.
It was an ultimatum.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And that happens a lot in the Old Testament. Another way that he speaks to us today is through his word. And the Bible says in Hebrews 4, verse 12, for the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any two-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. That means his sword is so precise that it can conduct surgery on your heart and in your soul to take out all of that bad stuff, all of the icky, and provide healing for you and take out everything that's unlike him. And he can do that with precision and accuracy. But he also will lead us the way that we should go. If we're reading his word, we're being transformed by the renewing of our mind.
Agreed, 100%.
So on March 3rd in 2019, I heard the audible voice of the Father. And that's not something that you say lightly. That's not something that happens on a daily. I don't hear his voice every single day, but I can hear him in my gut, in my soul, in my, all around. I can hear him telling me what to do. But this particular day, I was sleeping. It was a Sunday morning, March 3rd, and I shot up out of my bed and I heard loud in my head, heard it really loud, today's the day, dig. Now, if anyone else would have heard that, they would not have known what that meant. I instinctively knew what it meant, but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't understand. I grew up not knowing who my father was, not knowing really who I was, and I had an identity crisis problem my entire life because I didn't know who I was, and who I belonged to. So I was looking for love in all the wrong places and trying to find out who I was. By this point, I was fine. I was strong in the Lord, and I was confident. I'd been transformed. I didn't need anything, but for some reason, he did a tremendous miracle in my life. And I will never be the same because I heard the audible voice. He woke me up and he said, today's the day, dig. And so I at the time I was working for a church. I went to church. I didn't say anything to anybody. And I worked in the sound booth. And then once I got everything together and ready, I was like, oh, today's the day, dig. I was like, okay. So I opened up my phone and I went on ancestry.com and I started looking and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm not sure how this is going to come about. But I went on there and then I closed it, went through service. At the end of service, we came home and then I decided to get us pizza. I went to the pizza store and I had to wait in the parking lot. And I remembered again, today's the day, dig. I opened up the Ancestry app and all of a sudden, this tree that had been there for years, all of a sudden was there. And it had names that I knew. It had my father's name and my grandmother's name because I knew their names. That's all I knew. And all of a sudden, I knew that this person that had this tree was related to me. And I was blown away. And I couldn't believe it. And I thought, it's hidden. Everything else was hidden, though. That was what was so weird, is that all the names were hidden. So I didn't know whose tree that was. I came home, I was quiet, I didn't say anything. And I went in my room and I was painting furniture. And I opened up the app again. And it was in the evening. And I opened it up and I'm looking at it. And then all of a sudden I saw a name and I thought, this is a weird name. Let me go on Facebook. I went on Facebook, I searched that person's name, and I found that person. That person is one of my nieces now that I know that. And I contacted her. Now, let me just tell you that this was a God thing. That girl had her Facebook. She had taken it off. She had taken it off her app. She had just put it back on her phone, like within that hour. And she got my message. She messaged me and she said, I'll connect you with your brother. She doesn't want anything to do with the family, blah, blah, blah. I'll connect you with your brother. I was like, my brother? Like, oh my gosh. And like my heart was started racing. And within 30 minutes, I get a phone call and I met my brother.
Now, backstory on that is they actually knew about you and had been trying to find you as well.
Right. Well, my brother, Ray, he did, and he was looking for me. So he was not surprised. My entire life, I knew, well, actually, I wouldn't say, when I was 13, my grandmother told me my father's name. And I was like, how would I ever find him? I have no idea. My name was changed. I don't know how he would find me if he was looking for me. It was like a needle in a haystack. It's like saying John Smith in English. It was such a common name. I was like, there's no way I can find him. It's just impossible. It's impossible. I hired private investigators. I would go through the phone book and I would call every single person with that name when I lived in New York. And I was just like, I don't know how. And I would cry out. And it was my heart's desire, my biggest prayer, that I would meet my father, that I would know who he was and meet my family. And it never happened. And like I said, at this point, I was whole and complete. I wasn't broken anymore. And so when I'm sitting there talking to my brother and he tells me that he was looking for me, that he knew about me, but it was hard because my name had been changed. He found my mother. He knew my mother's name, but he was at a dead end. And then all of a sudden that everything just became like open. It fell into place. Like, you can't tell me that wasn't the father's doing. Mm-hmm. And then, like my niece, she ended up closing up her Facebook again. I've never talked to her again. It was just at the right place, just amazing. 2 months later, Memorial Day weekend, and that's why we're doing this today, because and I know it's a week out, but this is the 5th anniversary of me being able to go down to New York with my husband and meet my father. He was still alive, which I could not believe. And my brother was like, you have to come and meet him. This would be good for him. He needs this. He's sick. He's not doing well. And then he went into the hospital. So we quickly flew out there for Memorial Day weekend, spent the whole weekend, which I never thought I would get Nathanael, on a plane to New York. like country hunting guy in the city. Like that, I just didn't think it would happen, but he was like, "Let's go." And
It was about like a fish out of water too
but
for me.
but it wasn't as bad as you thought.
The air trip was.
Oh my God.
It was worse.
Anyway, so I got to meet him. I know that it was good for him. I met his wife. I met my other siblings that are still alive, and it was incredible and it was surreal. And I remember going down the hallway to he was in the hospital, and I just thought, I just can't believe it. I just can't believe that he did this. And the entire time I'm like, you didn't have to do it. Like, you didn't have to do it. Why did you do it? Like, I don't usually ask why, but why? Like, you didn't have to. Like, I was just in so much awe that he did that for me, because that had been my biggest prayer. And at that point, I didn't need it, but he did it anyway. And how good is he? He's such a good father. And we spent the whole weekend, like I said, met my brothers and my sister and my two nieces and a nephew. Um, I had another sister that she passed away and she has some kids, but I didn't meet them. And so it was just amazing. And I don't know why it's hit me so hard this past Memorial Day weekend, because maybe it's because it's the 5-year anniversary. And he was just reminding me of everything. And it just blew me away. It just totally blew me away because he's so good. And, maybe there's something that you're praying about. Maybe there's something that you are longing for. And I just want to tell you, don't give up. Like, don't give up, because you never know what he's going to do, when he's going to do it, how he's going to do it. And so I can look back now and I know it was the audible voice of the Father. I heard it, and I've heard it before. So I knew it was him. And he says that his sheep will know his voice. And I knew it was him. And he didn't give me a whole sentence. Like, he just said, "Today's the day, dig." Like, but I knew instinctively, I knew what that was about. And I don't know how I knew it, but I did. And then it just happened so fast and so quickly.
Everything fell into place.
Everything fell into place. And it was just so incredible. And it blessed my kids too, because they knew that that was a desire that I had. And I wish Ari could have went with us to New York, because she's actually never been there. So maybe one day I can take her over there and meet some of her family. But the funny thing is that I actually ended up finding another brother so that we all found after the fact. So that was, kind of interesting. But you just never know.
No, we don't know. We don't know what God has in store, but I think
Yeah.
He wants to bless us like that. I think He
Right.
wants to, because we are His children.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't believe that he still speaks. And so that's why I wanted to share the testimony that yes, he does. He can speak to you directly. He can speak to you through his word. He can speak to you through other people and through nature. Why don't you share a time where that, and it's like that. Like, sometimes he gives you revelation or wisdom or knowledge that you shouldn't have, or that you didn't know before.
Sometimes it's the Holy Spirit just speaks to us.
Right.
Sometimes about someone,
Mm-hmm.
giving you discernment
Mm-hmm.
as far as whether that person is a truthful, good person,
Mm-hmm.
or whether that person
Stay
is
away, danger, danger.
So that way, if you listen, He'll tell you who you need to have in your circle and who you don't need to have in your circle.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, honestly, when I was very, very young, you talk about visions or whatever, but basically, I seen colors,
Mm-hmm.
and it was good versus evil.
Mm-hmm.
But I was young enough, but at that point in time, and I seen Satan, but I seen God, and I knew that something had to. I was young enough that was my first time ever coming to God and saying, "I need a Savior."
Mm-hmm.
That's when I got saved.
Wow.
So I just saw those.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's just two colors.
Well, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I know that there was one time that he spoke to you.
What time was that, hon?
Well,
Huh?
not to tell your story for you,
Oh, go
but
ahead.
let
I
me
know where you're going with it.
oh, okay,
Go
so
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go
No,
ahead.
I want you
I
to
want to
share it.
hear how you say it.
I want you to share.
What? Tell me.
People were trying to hook you up.
Oh, no, that's before. So, yeah, after at one point in time, after my divorce, people were trying, after a couple of years, were trying to hook me up. And, just talking to people in general, uh, regardless, not even meeting, but even just on the phone, I knew I wasn't interested, stay away. And it turned
You
out to
felt
be,
like God said no.
yeah, I mean, and I knew that afterwards, of course,
You
some,
got
some
some
things,
facts.
some things come out. We got some facts, and, you
And
know,
here's this is a good point though, because one of those people specifically, someone told you this is a godly Christian woman,
mhm.
and
Coming from a man that I went to church with,
and
that was family of this woman.
and then you felt he said
Oh
no,
no.
and then
And that's just through a
we
phone
had right,
conversation.
and then we have facts that we knew that it was anything but that she was anything far
Later
from that,
on.
and that's why you can't. You the word Christian godly woman, you have to discern for yourself, is that the truth or not? And you immediately you heard from him and he said no.
But shortly after you and I started talking, I knew that God had placed you in my life for a reason.
Mm-hmm. What did God place?
I placed a love in my heart for you.
That's what he told me. And so we use that all the time. But he knew before I knew, because I wanted to be so careful and I wanted to make sure. But he knew because God had already been leading him and telling him. And so I hope that this has been something that's encouraging to you to hear that God still works miracles, that he still speaks. And what he did yesterday, he can do today and he'll do tomorrow. He's the same. He never
That's
changes.
exactly right.
And he'll give you dreams and visions. And if he has, ask him, what does it mean? What do I need to know? Write it down and see what he says and then wait for it.
What's funny is sometimes it may not make sense.
Right. Like all the dreams that I
Write
had
it
did
out.
not
But at
make
some
sense.
point in time, there will be a reference to it, and you can go back and
Hmm.
reread it, and then he'll open your eyes and and give you clarity.
Yes. Right. It's amazing to me. If you're listening to this on 103.5 The Light or on WTTLradio.com, if you would go to our website, boonepodcast.com, and watch the video. In the video, I am putting some of the pictures of meeting my father and going to New York, and so that you could actually see some of that behind the scenes kind of B-roll footage. And I think it will really bless you because then you can see. I think it was really sweet. I still can't believe it, and when I think back to it, I still can't believe it. But even just us getting married, that was his orchestration, his divine intervention, and his divine counsel. Really, he helped us. He told us what to do, how to get together, and it's just incredible to me to watch it and look back and reminisce. Memorial Day. So for me, Memorial Day means something totally different. It's the memory of family
Father.
and my father in heaven, moving all kinds of things and scenarios and lives just to answer my little prayer that I had as a kid, being so broken and then coming full circle as an adult. It was just incredible. Please go to boonepodcast.com and listen or watch to all of our podcasts. You can also watch all of our podcasts on any podcast app. We ask you to go ahead and subscribe to our podcast, but also please review them. If you have any prayer requests or praise reports, we would love to hear from you, or just words of encouragement. Please go ahead and go to boonepodcast.com and go on our contact us form and just fill that out, and we will get that right away. And if you want to subscribe to our email list, that can also be done on boonepodcast.com, so that you could receive emails. We'll be doing that in the future. We haven't done any yet, but we will. And if you have any topics that you'd like to talk about, we would love to hear from you about that as well.